Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mikey. You guys are rocking with me on Mikey's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we're going to be rocking with a new series called The Mongols Rise of the Empire by Kings and Generals. Guys, please, if you guys want any other type of history content, not pertaining towards war or anything, please, you gotta let me know a certain type of video that you want, because I promise you, there's just too many things out there. So give me something that you want. That way I can make content specifically for you. You know what I'm saying? But with that being said, let's just go ahead and dive right on in. Don't forget to also check out my short content called Today in History. You have to slip that in. All right, let's go ahead and dive right on in, guys.
This video was sponsored by The Great Courses Plus. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com today to start your free trial. Hard places often breed hard people, and Mongolia is one of the most inhospitable lands in the world. This is the story of the people who came out of the steppes and built the biggest empire in history. This is the story of Temujin and how he became Genghis Khan.
Now, real quick before we get started too, I am aware that I'm pretty sure this was, although it's the largest obviously by far, I think it's the size equivalent of Africa. I'm pretty sure that this is only the second empire of the steppe, or not second but third if I'm not mistaken, because I know they had the Gok Turks. They had one after that, I'm pretty sure, then they have this one. But and I know that one was, the Gok Turks was during the majorly during the conquest of the Muslim conquests and things like that during the 600s, about 600 years before this. But let's go ahead and get back into it though, guys. Sorry.
How he became Genghis Khan. The history of the eastern part of the Asian steppe is shrouded in mystery, and so the early history of the Mongols is still debated. At the beginning of the 10th century, the Proto-Mongolic Khitan people formed an empire called the Great Liao. The Khitans fought many wars in Korea, China and Central Asia, but by 1125 were defeated by the Chinese Jin dynasty and moved to establish a new Khitan state called Western Liao. To the north, in modern-day Mongolia, a number of nomadic tribes united in a tribal confederation called Kamag Mongol, which can be translated as Whole Mongol. One of the clans within the confederacy was the Borjigin, and its representatives were elected the Khans of the Union multiple times in the 12th century. Kamag Mongol was in a long-term rivalry with the Tatar Confederacy, which also nomadized in the region.
Now, I know that there are still, these are empires and stuff, but I'm pretty sure, and let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, but I feel like these are also kind of like how the Holy Roman Empire was, where it's not really an empire, it's just like a whole bunch of different tribes who kind of cohorse towards each other, but they're not really unified yet, you know what I'm saying? But if I'm wrong though, let me know in the whatchamacallit though. Alright, let's get back into it though, guys.
Confederacy, which also nomadized in the region. This struggle weakened the Mongols, and their confederacy almost ceased to exist in the second half of the 12th century. The chief of the Borjigin clan at the time, Yesugei, was trying to reunite the tribes once again. In 1171, he arranged a marriage between his 9-year-old son Temujin and the daughter of the chief of a nearby clan, Borta. Some sources claim that Yesugei was poisoned by the Tatars during the wedding. Temujin attempted to assume the role of chieftain, but he was rejected and exiled with his family. For the next 6 years, Temujin lived in poverty and was even enslaved on occasion. Eventually, Temujin started forming his tribe with the help of his
Now, fun fact too, I know that whenever he was enslaved, he was, I think he was actually enslaved by one of his father's old allies. We didn't really realize that it was him at first, and then when one of the people realized that it was him, they kind of just gave him the opportunity essentially to escape, and he took the opportunity. But, just a quick fun fact real quick. Let's go ahead and get back into it.
Temujin started forming his tribe with the help of his blood brother Jamuka and the leader of the Kherate tribe, Togrul Khan. Temujin and Jamuka raided other tribes together, but eventually they had a falling out. Jamuka supported the traditional Mongolian aristocracy, while Temujin gave positions of power to capable people outside his tribe. Threatened by Temujin's rise in popularity, Jamuka attacked him in 1187 with an army of 30,000 men. Temujin's 20,000 men were decisively beaten at the Battle of Dalan-Belzut. Not much is known about Temujin's life in the next 10 years. But in 1197 we see him commanding a united force of the Mongols, the Karaits, in the war against the Tatars initiated.
Now I know that I think later on too he would adopt that type of way of doing his military of only not really he doesn't care if you know who you know or whatever, that it's your skills and things like that, because he only wants the best of the best. I know that he took that into his empire. I know that was a big part of it.
Karaits in the war against the Tatars initiated by the Jin dynasty. Temujin would avenge his father in this conflict. The leaders of the Tatar tribes were executed, while the non-aristocrats were invited to join his ranks. He delegated authority based on skill and loyalty, rather than tribal affiliation or blood. As an incentive, Temujin promised civilians and soldiers a portion of the war spoils. His new rules laid the foundations of a code of law which would eventually be developed and applied.
Yeah, I know that one thing too. I know that as a main requirement anyway, that he just required you can join his army as long as you know how to ride a horse at top speed, while only using your legs pretty much. You have your arms free. That way you have to be able to know how to shoot a bow or do something, whatever your task is at top speed, only using your legs to hold on. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was about the main requirements though, but I think if you can get past that, then you were good. But let's go ahead and get back into it, I guess.
Laid the foundations of a code of law which would eventually be developed and applied to his empire. His father's death influenced Temujin, and one of the laws was that hospitality was sacred. Guests and envoys should not be harmed. Temujin revolutionized the steppe world. Each victory brought more warriors to his side, and he reformed the Mongols into an army. The decimal system was implemented, and the army was divided into tens, hundreds, thousands, and 10,000s. Transfers between the units were forbidden, and if one man deserted, the other 9 in his unit were put to death.
So that's messed up, but I guess in a messed up way, that kind of would bring, you and your kind of section, I guess you can say, really, really close, knowing that, if one of you guys wants to be a coward and desert, we're all going to die, And I'm sure that didn't really happen, because they had really loyal soldiers too, but let's kind of get back into it. Okay?
The other 9 in his unit were put to death. Commanders were chosen by their men, except for the commanders of the 10,000s, so-called tumans, who were hand-picked by the Khan himself. This chain of command allowed flexibility, discipline, and loyalty, and was vital to performing sophisticated maneuvers. Every able-bodied man had to be a part of this structure. In 1201, a number of opposing clans called a council, Kurultai in the Mongolian language, and declared Jamuka the Khan. This sparked a 5-year war between him and Temujin, and the latter managed to defeat his former blood brother at the Battle of the 13 Sides. That same year, Temujin assembled another council of the Mongol chiefs, who elected him as their leader, giving him the title of Genghis Khan, the leader of all. For the first time, the warring tribes united as one nomadic nation, under one banner and one authority. In 1209, the Mongols began their first invasion against the powerful Liao dynasty to the southwest. The details of this conflict are not clear, but it seems that Genghis Khan was successful in open battles, but had difficulties taking the well-fortified cities. The Mongols learned the importance of siege warfare in this campaign. The surrounded cities slowly succumbed to starvation and diseases, and
yeah, I'm pretty sure that, having an all-cavalry army would kind of go, kind of coalesce into that, or kind of carry over to that, because obviously in open land you have nothing but horses, and I don't think that they have a separate unit for like carrying siege equipment like trebuchets or catapults, anything like that. So that's why I obviously they wouldn't. But all right, let's go and get back into it though, guys. I know I get annoying.
The surrounded cities slowly succumbed to starvation and diseases, and the Liao Emperor had to submit to Genghis Khan and become his vassal. Up until this point, the Jin dynasty underestimated the Mongols as a nuisance on their northern border, and even refused a call to aid by the Liao, but by 1211 they were on high alert. They even demanded Mongol submission, which led to war. In March 1211, Genghis Khan summoned all Mongol chieftains and prepared to wage war against China. The Jin had a massive population and mobilized around 800,000 infantry, most of which were untrained peasants with low morale, and 150,000 highly trained heavy cavalry. This vast army, however, was spread across the Great Wall and garrisoned separate fortresses. Meanwhile, the Mongols had
I kind of feel like that's China's kind of running problem in a lot of historical wars and things like that aren't like technically civil wars within themselves during between warring warlords and stuff. I feel like because even you got to think about even with in World War II, whenever they were getting invaded by Japan, that was their main problem, is the fact that they had a whole bunch of kind of peasants who were bolstering up their army, and all their equipment was mainly just swords and stuff, and they're going up against tanks, actual freaking weapon systems. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it was kind of a slaughter and easy victories and things. But all right, let's go and get back into it, though, guys.
And garrisoned separate fortresses. Meanwhile, the Mongols had a 90,000 strong cavalry army, which had three main components: light cavalry scouts, horse archers armed with composite bows, and heavy cavalry armed with lances and curved swords. All of these men were highly trained and loyal. After they bypassed the hopelessly ineffective Great Wall, the Mongols split into two armies. The main army was led by the Great Khan himself, and was 60,000 strong, while the other 30,000 were taken by his son Ogedei to attack the city of Datong. Genghis Khan headed for the strategic Juyong Pass protecting Beijing, but along the way he was stopped at the pass of Yehuling, where the bulk of the Jin army awaited him. For months the Mongols waited for the Jin to make a move, but they held their ground. While waiting, Genghis sent his...
Honestly, I feel like the Jin army should have already been mobilized, and on that wall, like on that obviously the huge opening at the end of the wall, I feel like that probably would have helped them out, but I don't know, who knows. But I'm actually really surprised with how easily the horde is actually able to move around the rocky terrain too with their horses. That's usually a big stop for them. But I don't know. Let's go and get into those guys.
Jin to make a move, but they held their ground. While waiting, Genghis sent his trusted generals Jebei and Subutai to lead a small force which attacked the western front from the rear in the Battle of Wuxia Fortress. The Jin army and their commander were annihilated. Once the secondary army quickly grouped up with the main force, which was still waiting in Yehuling, the Mongols attacked the defenders in the mountainous terrain and pushed the Jin forces back. Genghis sent men over the peaks surrounding the pass, which the Jin generals thought was impassable, and attacked the much larger army from both sides. Jebei, one of the best Mongol generals, used the trademark Mongol tactic of a feigned retreat. After a short skirmish, the Mongols pretended to flee, leaving loot as they fled. The Jin defenders took the bait and left their fortifications trying to chase them down. Little did they know they were falling into a deadly trap, where thousands of them were attacked from all sides by Mongol archers. With the gates of China now open, Genghis Khan began raiding the countryside before he withdrew for the winter.
Yeah, I feel like they were probably just a little bit too war drunk. which is a term I like to use when you have way too much adrenaline. You're in war, you have way too much adrenaline pumping, so you pretty much have these side blinders on, and that's essentially what we kind of see what happened there. And you're mainly subject to getting ambushed whenever that happens. Kind of crazy. Let's go and see what happens, okay?
Before he withdrew for the winter. The following year, the Mongols struck again, only this time they besieged Datong, where Genghis was wounded by an arrow. The city held out against the invaders, who once again retreated for the winter, this time with even more knowledge about their enemy and siege warfare. In 1213, when the Mongols invaded again, their mobility prevented the Jin from organizing a successful resistance as their countryside was raided. The Mongols began besieging multiple fortresses and cities, and waited for the enemy to attempt to break the siege, only to be ambushed and defeated. The Mongols were fighting guerrilla warfare within a foreign land. The cities that surrendered had most of their inhabitants murdered or enslaved. However, engineers, artisans, merchants, doctors, teachers, priests and administrators were spared and asked to join the Mongol horde. Many others were taken and used as meat shields for the following sieges, marching in the vanguard to block arrows or discourage the archers from firing.
Yeah, as brutal as the Mongol Empire really was, you can't deny that they're number one when it comes to psychological warfare, when we see things like this, and really chemical warfare as a whole, because I mean 13th century Europe kind of can attest to that, in the Black Plague and all that stuff. But yeah, let's go ahead and get back into it though, guys. Having fun.
The archers from firing. After securing all Jin lands north of the Yellow River, Genghis moved against the capital of Beijing and besieged it. The Mongols tried to starve the city out, but after a few months an epidemic spread through their camp, and they had to negotiate with the Jin Emperor Xuanzong. He agreed to peace in exchange for a tribute of loot, men, horses and his daughter, along with subjugation to the Mongol Khan. Thus, the Mongols left China and returned to Mongolia with their treasure, but just outside the Great Wall, a messenger galloped to Genghis Khan. The emperor had moved his court to Kaifeng to the south. This enraged the Great Khan, as it signaled that the Jin planned to retaliate. The Mongols quickly returned to Beijing and besieged the city with the help of thousands of Chinese engineers. The city was surrounded, breached and razed. For weeks, thousands of carts hauled loot back to Mongolia. The fires in the city burned for over a month, while its people were massacred.
Yeah, I feel like these wars right here, the Mongol invasions and stuff, especially in China, is the reason why in our last video, the Falling of World War II, we saw that huge spike in death to population whenever he was talking about the other different wars compared to World War II. That's why, because this was, in China, was mainly, was the main world population at the time, and the Mongol just massacres all over the place. Alright, let's go ahead and end this video though, guys.
Yeah. The fires in the city burned for over a month, while its people were massacred. What was once considered a nuisance had brought a 20 million strong nation to its knees. And now, the Mongol devastation was heading west.
Alright guys, we'll go ahead and end it right there. Yeah, isn't it crazy that even now in where we are in this series, obviously the very first video, we haven't even encompassed the entire map worth of their land that they're about to encompass. I think they go all the way over into Poland essentially. They definitely conquered Russia and Muscovy or something like that. But anyway, thank you guys again for joining me on another episode of Micah's Intellectual Corner, and thank you for joining me on another series as we open up another series. Please don't be shy to bombard me with different requests, because sometimes if you hit me up with just one, it might get lost in the universe essentially. But I try to write down as many of them as I can. I know that this was one of my recommendations as well. I think that came with my Muslim Conquest recommendation. And also I wanted to get into it because it kind of moves us away from again, around the world, because we're being kind of stuck around Europe, the European history, and I have no problem with that. But I want to, encompass the world, Asian history, African history, American history, South American history, all that stuff. But with that being said, don't forget to check out my Today in History shorts. I'll see you guys when I see you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm out. Peace.